here we are again. It is 4 o'clock on a Saturday, and this is
I fixed that.
A Mirror Darkly, and we're fixing our banner, and so I will sing and dance. No, just kidding. I'm not going to sing or dance because you don't want that. The FCC would probably come along and shut us down. So
Yes.
No, they have no.
I know. That's why they would, because the singing is that bad. They have no jurisdiction, but they would come in anyway. Britt, we're live. So anyway, so we're here with, the topic is good news, bad news. We just want to remind you that we run the show in 10-minute segments. So feel free to comment either in the comments on Facebook or on YouTube.
That's what I did wrong.
And you've got it in the description thing.
Yes,
Which I saw. I didn't know why you had something there. Just get rid of it all
headline
completely.
should not be.
Okay, so we're still fixing.
Because I was lame today.
And you may notice that we're smoother than we were. Not in the sense of being cool smooth, but the video is smoother because we had a cheap, some kind of card thing.
No, it has nothing to do with today's.
Oh, that's not? Oh,
No,
okay.
That's only Sundays.
Oh, so on Sunday, Robin won't be like preaching like this, like he's a robot. And because we got a new card thing. It's still there.
That's fine.
Oh.
That's normal.
The thing underneath looks
Yes.
like icicles hanging down. What's that thing underneath?
Oh,
You've got words under there.
that's because that didn't go away. There.
Oh, there we go. So, anyway, that's what I thought you were trying to fix.
No,
was
this
the
was
icicles.
all screwed up.
It looked like icicles
No, the blue
on the bottom.
the blue stuff under us was all screwed up.
Okay.
Now it's not.
The beginning of our show is becoming like Regis and Kathy Lee was, where they would talk and laugh and goof around and stuff.
Try to get things set
Well,
properly.
they had actual people working for them
Yes,
that
and we're trying to
knew
do
what
it
they
all.
were doing.
Yeah, well, the software we use is designed to be used by one person.
Yes. And,
A person that has 8 hands.
and the camera's up too high because my chin's like sitting on the thing like this. I'm barely looking over the top.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Shows too much of me now, but whatever. So the nice thing about, hey, we can hear that, Britt.
I was not in the room.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were over there.
No, I was not in the room. I was going to the bathroom. I'm sorry. I did not mean for that to go off.
Okay. So anyway, I forgot what I was saying now, but anyway, we're getting some interference issues, so hopefully we're good now. So anyway, the nice thing about living in California in the high desert is when it's not windy or raining, you can go sleeveless. I'm even wearing shorts. So if you're wondering what season it is, we're in the high desert. It's not super cold. So I do wear a jacket or a sweater outside, but being inside, I'm all about as few clothes as possible, as much as I can get away with it. Plus, I'm trying to get extra vitamin D from the sun, even though you can't get as much in the winter. Still better than nothing. So anyway, so we were talking about good news, bad news.
Good news, bad news. And the penchant that we have to be attracted to all things bad. And so I thought it'd be nice to talk about some of the things that are going well. There's a book that came out recently by one of the editors at humanprogress.org called 10 Global Trends Every Smart Person Should Know. And he points out that it's not easy being optimistic nowadays. There's no money in it. It's unlikely that his book will sell that well because he wants to see things that are going well. Mm-hmm. We want 10 things that are going to screw us. That is, the news program says, they give a little teaser, what's in your medicine cabinet that's going to kill you? Come back after this message.
Well, an entire bottle of ibuprofen would do it.
Yeah, there's lots of things that could. It is the news. Social media wants us to think that the world is going to the dogs, that everything is bad. And the reality, I've rather repeatedly pointed out that we're actually living in the best possible time that we could be, just about, aside from the pandemic, and that's temporary. One of the other articles that I thought was interesting that I ran across, this was, what's his name, John Mueller. He wrote that I have yet to run into an American over the age of 47 who regularly observes, if I had been born in the 19th century, I'd probably be dead by now. Obviously, if you actually were born in the 19th century, you would be dead by now because you'd be
they are all
exceptionally old. Yes. But the point of the observation is the improvement in health care and other issues compared to what it was like in the 19th century. That is, for instance, when I was young, and this was the middle of the 20th century, I had significant childhood illnesses for which there are now vaccinations. But I survived my childhood illnesses because medical science was at a level, even in the early 1960s, where they could take care of you with those sorts of issues. And so the tonsillitis did not kill me. They just took my tonsils out. I did not die from the mumps and measles, both kinds. Whatever else I had, scarlet fever, rubella, who knows. I was very sick until I was about 4. But all those things could have taken me out. But then you think in terms of, minor sorts of things that people might have died from in the 19th century. That is it Coolidge? It's one of the presidents. His son died after playing a game of tennis because he scratched his foot.
And he got an infection.
He got an infection and he died.
Yeah. Now, what's fascinating is, though, I just finished reading the autobiography of Ben Franklin, which I do recommend. It's easier as an audiobook, but you have to keep reminding yourself it's not actually Benjamin Franklin that's reading it. But because I had to do it, because the guy that, at least the one I read, the guy that they hired, sounds like what you think Ben Franklin would sound like, kind of like a little old man voice. So, but anyway.
You probably selected him for that reason.
Probably. So but he talked about how much he regretted the fact that his son died of smallpox at a very young age, and he hadn't done anything about it. They did have a smallpox vaccine then, and it was just they would inject you with a little bit of smallpox and hope and pray that it didn't get out of control in your body and kill you. So it was a vaccine that could kill you. But he said that it would, if it's a choice between the vaccine that has the potential for killing you or smallpox that will kill you, then it's better to err on the side of safety with the risk of danger. So that's like seriously my paraphrase of it. But that's basically what it boils down to. And there's a lot of discussion right now about the COVID vaccines, like how do we know they're safe? They came out with it awfully fast. And then I just was in a discussion with a friend who said that she won't get the AstraZeneca vaccine. Well, she can't anyway because she has allergies, I guess. But she won't get the AstraZeneca one because it's made with male fetuses, aborted male fetuses. And I'm like, that's not a thing. So, and I had looked, Johns Hopkins said they didn't use any male fetuses in the AstraZeneca vaccine. So, and then upon further investigation, she said, no, it's right on the label. I said, then show me, because I don't believe you. And then on further examination, the RNA strand that was used to develop the AstraZeneca vaccine is a replicated strand from a male fetus that was aborted in 1973 in the Netherlands, I think they said. And they have duplicated this RNA strand so many times. They've done it over the years to do tons of things. And I oppose abortion, and I don't oppose women who choose to get them, but I do oppose the activity of abortion. And if you ever want to get into a discussion on abortion with me, I'll give you what my
we could always do that
view
sometime,
is.
Too.
That could be a topic, yeah. But anyway, so I would never condemn a woman who made that choice, but I don't believe that abortion is a good choice. But anyway, so having said that, it did bother me a little bit that there was this this baby who had been aborted in 1973. I mean, he would be almost 50 years old, and that made me kind of sad because I've gotten to live my life and he hasn't gotten to live his. But then I thought about it, that it's a tragedy that choice was made for him, but he has saved millions of lives and continues to save millions of lives through his DNA, through his RNA. So I think about what God does. God perverts evil for good. So something as horrible and tragic as an abortion ended up doing good, and so I don't have an issue with it. If they offered me the AstraZeneca vaccine, I would take it, because not taking it doesn't save that little boy's life. It's already a done deal, but a lot of good things have come out of it. So, and it's not like they're harvesting fetuses to get more RNA and to develop vaccines. So I don't have an issue with that. If they were doing that, I would have a serious problem with it, and I would be opposed to it too. But God's in the business of perverting evil for good, and so I think this is one example where something horrible happened and good things came out of it. So that's kind of how I feel about the AstraZeneca vaccine. Plus, by saying things like it's made from aborted male fetuses, you really poison the well in a situation where a lot of people are opposed to vaccines anyway.
Because they're stupid.
Well, yeah. And because they want to believe one doctor and who's been debunked, and his license to practice medicine has been taken away, and he's been punished.
And his motivation, what he published, was financial.
Right. And where it was published has retracted it and said that it was not true and all that. So, but in spite of that, people like to believe lies because we're sinners, and lies are more enticing than the truth.
Well, bad news is always more enticing to us.
Right.
We want to assume the worst because, for whatever reason, we seem to get off on that.
A better way to express it, if you are opposed to the AstraZeneca vaccine, a better way to say it is, I will take any of the vaccines except AstraZeneca because it was developed from a replicated RNA strand from a baby that was aborted in 1973. So that gives the hearer a chance to go, I don't have an issue with that. But if you say it's got aborted baby fetuses in it, it's like, well, is that why it hurts? Because there's like a chunk of baby in there? It's like, sick joke. But anyway, so I think that how we say things is as important as what we say about things. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. If you have an AstraZeneca vaccine for me, I will take it.
Yeah, well, as Jordan Peterson, I was listening to something he did several years ago, pointed out, that is, when you are having an argument with someone, your best bet, that is, if you want to do it properly, is to, as one of the ground rules, set it up so that you have to explain what your opponent believes, and in such a way that they are satisfied with your explanation of it. Because otherwise, what you'll tend to do is what's called a straw man argument. You'll take the person's argument and you'll make it look as stupid and weak and idiotic as possible, and then rip it to shreds. Well, duh, but that's a straw man argument. That's not really what your opponent is saying. And that's incredibly common. That is, people don't actually try to find out what the other side says. They just make fun of what the other side says, set it up in the most idiotic possible way, and then take that apart.
Right.
You have not had a reasonable, rational discussion at that level.
Right.
You're just ripping apart something that nobody agrees with. So try to avoid doing that. So what are these 10 global trends that are positive things, good news, that... And see, that's the other thing. Bad news tends to be immediate, in your face, and you've got to do something about it.
Right.
Good news, you tend not to notice because it's slow and gradual, and you just get used to it, and it's just the way things are. It's kind of like the story of somebody gets on the airplane, finds out they have Wi-Fi, and so they go ahead and get it, and it's slow and not very good, and then they start complaining about how bad the Wi-Fi is. It's like, well, 10 minutes ago Wi-Fi didn't exist for airplanes.
Right.
Now it does, and okay, it's
Well,
not perfect yet, but you're in an airplane flying at 30,000 feet, surfing the internet. That's not bad.
Yeah. Well, it's like that night that I complained because, was it Uber Eats didn't have any drivers to deliver our McDonald's. McDonald's was like a mile away. I just was too lazy to get in the car. I don't have an issue going places because of COVID. Like, I'm not like, oh, I have to stay home because there's this COVID thing. No, I'll go wherever. But I just was lazy, and it was a nasty night. And actually, I think it was it New Year's Eve?
I don't remember what it was.
Something was like the next day.
You just
or
didn't feel
something.
like doing it
And
for whatever reason.
I was being lazy, and then I was super angry that my food. Well, it kept like delaying it and delaying it. I'm like, well, is somebody picking it up? And then I couldn't cancel it, and that was the rub for me. I couldn't cancel it. But just the fact that we can do delivery and curbside service for things like that. Like the line at El Pollo Loco is always really long, so I have learned that if I do the curbside service and say I want it right away, if I drive over there, I'm not there 2 seconds, and they bring it out to me. And all these other poor slobs are sitting in this long line that's weaving through the parking lot. And I just pull out, boop, oh, food, thank you. Out I go. And they're like, how'd she do that? It's easy. It's the app, and you just order. So, a lot of good things have come out of this COVID thing,
Yeah. So, one global trend that you probably will not see much reporting on is that global income is rising. Economic historians estimate that in year one of the Common Era, that is 1 AD, the average global income per person per year was about $800 in 2011 money. Fast forward 18 centuries. By the year 1800, the average global income had only increased to a measly $1,140.
Wow, that wasn't much.
Not a whole lot in 18 centuries. This meant that in the 1800 years separating the birth of Christ and the election of Thomas Jefferson to the U.S. presidency, average income only rose by about 40%.
Interesting.
However, things began to accelerate during the Industrial Revolution. Between 1800 and 1900, average incomes rose from approximately $1,140 to $2,021. Thankfully, this progress has drastically increased in recent decades. Today, the average global income is roughly $14,600 per year, which is a 622% rise since 1900, or 1,725% higher than 180.
Interesting. And most of it's happened in the last...
Most of it's happened in the last century.
Yeah.
That is, the Industrial Revolution really jump-started the world economy. That is, you look at the economic growth on a chart from ancient times up until modern times, it kind of goes along like this, and then suddenly the Industrial Revolution hits, boop.
Wow.
And just very quick rise. And it has just radically changed the way the world works and has eliminated, in fact, this is the next global trend, the end of poverty. In 1820, nearly 84% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty, defined as living on less than $1.90 per person per day. Back then, only a small slither of society did not have to worry about being able to eat. That is, most people worried and legitimately worried about starving to death. Not like my daughter, who, if she hasn't eaten in the last hour, is afraid that she's never going to eat again.
And the fridge is full.
And the fridge is full. Yeah. Yeah, we
It's
have to
overstuffed.
clean out the fridge because it's so full of food we don't have room for anymore. By 1981, 42% of the world lived in extreme poverty, so it had declined by about 50%, by half, from 1820 to 1981. Today, the latest World Bank estimates suggest extreme poverty has fallen to just 8.6%. So in the 40 years since 1981, it's declined from 42% of the world population being at the extreme poverty level to now only 8.6%. The poor are getting less poor. The poor are getting richer. Roughly 150.
And that's worldwide?
That's worldwide.
Okay, so I wonder what it looks
Africa-
like in United States.
Well, the U.S. has not had to worry about starvation since the Revolutionary War, pretty much. That is, France actually had episodes of starvation in the 19th century.
Okay, so you hear about, American children are going to bed hungry.
Americans, one of the things that the Europeans noticed when we participated in World War I is just how large Americans were.
Well,
and yet you look at uniforms from the First World War and they seem small by modern standards because
we've gotten taller.
We're not
we're not talking large this way.
No, we're talking large, tall-wise.
Yeah.
That is, Americans were stronger, more robust, bigger than a lot of the world simply because we were better nourished than most of the world. That is, the U.S. really never had a shortage of food. Unlike, like I said, even parts of Europe, France, as I said, in the 19th century, they had starvation.
Although there are pockets of places where there's like less available fresh food, like in the inner cities and things like that. And so there's that. But then there's always this discussion of American children going to bed hungry. And I'm like, how? Because we give away so much. I mean, there's WIC, there's food stamps.
Yeah, but you have some parents that are drug addicted and
that
aren't
makes sense.
taking care of their children.
Yeah.
It's not a matter that there isn't the food for the children, that they couldn't get food for their children. It's just that they are not bothering to do so.
Right.
That is, you have child abuse, unfortunately, and that's something that's always been part of the human condition. Although, again, this isn't in the list of things I was going to cover, but you go back in time, child abuse, spouse abuse, these were not issues. Now they are. We want to do something about them. We want to stop it.
Well, they weren't issues because nobody reported it.
Nobody reported it, and nobody thought about it.
When I was first teaching, there were no mandated reporters. That was a thing that happened during my teaching career. So my second student teaching assignment, I taught in a 5th, 6th grade gifted class. Great group of kids, fabulous teacher. She was a great master teacher. But we had a little girl in there who, so the way that my master teacher worked it was if a student had an unsatisfactory paper, she would stamp it with parent signature, and the parent had to sign it that they had seen it. And I was told by my master teacher that if this girl got a grade that was less than 70%, that we weren't to send it home. We're just to talk to her directly because she got beaten by her dad when she got home if she had an unsatisfactory paper. So in the 80s, you didn't report that. It was just a thing, and you worked around it. By, I don't know when it was, mid-90s or whatever, now it's mandated report. If you have any inkling that something's happening, you need to report it, because you don't even have to have evidence as a mandated reporter. You just have to have a reasonable concern that something's going on. For example, a kid comes to school, he's got, a bruise on his cheek, and you say, "Oh, Billy, what happened to your cheek?" And if they give you a reasonable answer, like, "I was riding my bike and I fell and I hit my face," that makes sense. If the injury matches what the child says, that makes sense. You don't report that. But if he says something weird, like,
Leprechauns kicked me in the face.
Yeah. Well, like my sister, she had gone to that preschool when we lived in Lake Havasu, and she came home with this round wound on her hand. And my mom asked her, and this was like right around the McMartin preschool stuff, like right before it, because I went off to college when the McMartin thing happened. So most of that was going on. And actually, that stuff didn't happen. Now that their family was destroyed. It was not real. Yeah, it wasn't real. But it was a lot of media driven stuff. Yeah. But anyway, so
Be
but
skeptical of the news.
yes, so that's why I've quit watching it. I only watch like press conferences and stuff now, things that I can actually watch
Primary
the whole entire
sources.
thing. Primary sources. 'Cause I do not trust the news, any of them. It doesn't matter who's producing it. I don't trust any of them. If I want to know the weather, I'll watch the local news. If I want to watch car chases, I watch the local news. I'll sometimes watch the national news just to see what's going on out there or what I might want to check out, but I don't. I just stay off of it mostly. And I'm a news addict. I love the news. I've even stopped watching CBS Sunday Morning, which I have watched since it started when I was like 16. I took time off, obviously, because of being in college, not having a TV in my dorm. But anyway, but I digress. What was I talking about before that? The news. You got me up on that news tangent.
Martin.
Oh yeah. So anyway, so I asked when we
and
asked my
she-
sister what happened. She said the fish jumped out of the TV and bit me. So we were like, okay, we don't know what happened. Later, we figured out we think somebody burned her with the cigarette. They didn't like her there, and because she was a difficult child, but she was afraid to be there because they were mean to her. And she went to another preschool. My mom took her out of there and put her in a different preschool at the Lutheran church in town. And she loved it there. Her teacher's name was Mrs. Theophilus, like the Greek name Theophilus, and she called her Mrs. Theophilus, but she loved her. Like when I used to take her to preschool, I would like shove her in the door, slam the door, run to my car and get in and drive away because she was going to chase me. We didn't know that she hated it there. We just knew that she was stubborn and she didn't want to stay. And so it's like, nope, you're going to stay. And I feel kind of bad, but you don't know what you don't know until somebody tells you. So, but man, we would go pick her up from the Lutheran preschool and we couldn't drag her out of there, like kicking and screaming. We had to get her out of there because she loved it so much. So then we knew, okay, it's not being at preschool because we thought because she was with us all of the time that was why she was having meltdowns when she would go to preschool. No, they were horrible there to her and they abused her. And but anyway, my story, the point of all that was, if a kid says a fish jumped out of the TV and bit them, and that's why they have a bruise on their face, that's when you call the 800 number.
Right.
So, anyway, and that is the law. I don't have to have proof. I don't have to say, well, what really? Although I did have a social worker tell me, well, why didn't you ask them more questions? I said, because the law says I don't need to. That is your job, lady. So, and then if I report it and they decide not to act on it, then it's on them. It's not on me.
Right.
So I probably over-report a little, although I hardly ever do. It's not like I'm reporting. I don't even report once a year. But I've had to maybe 4 or 5 times in my career. But I've been at this like over 30 years. So you'd think, things happen.
It doesn't happen that frequently. That's the other thing.
And most of the time it's unfounded.
Right.
So, like
Child
I did.
abuse is actually relatively rare.
Yeah, I did have a kid tell me something that was extremely concerning. And the social worker, I found out later, social workers went to the house with the police. The police took their computers because he had said his brother was showing him naughty videos on YouTube, a 17-year-old brother. Well, come to find out, he didn't have a 17-year-old brother. He made up the whole thing. There was nothing on their computers, all that. And I felt bad, but that's what the kid told me, and my job is to report what the kid tells me. And he had done inappropriate things on the computers at school. And so I asked him, I said, how did you know? My 17-year-old brother, or he said, my brother shows me naughty videos. I go, how old's your brother? He goes, 17. So I reported it and come to find out there was no basis in it at all. He just made the whole thing up. So.
That happens too.
Yep.
So anyway, regarding poverty, the trend being what it is over the last 4 decades, the expectation, according to the UN and World Bank, is that within the next 10 to 20 years, extreme poverty will simply vanish. It won't be a problem anymore. 158,000 people a day leave extreme poverty. And the places that are seeing the most rapid economic growth are some of the poorest parts of the world. That is, sub-Saharan Africa has some of the best growth rates economically of any place else in the world, which is to be expected. That is, when you're at the bottom and you're finally coming up, you tend to come up really fast. That's why China, for the last several years, had such incredible economic growth because they were starting from so low.
Well, it's like
Now they're
losing weight.
now they're getting to the place where their growth rate is getting more like the rest of the industrialized world.
Well, it's like losing weight. You know, if you have somebody who like weighs like 600 or 700 pounds, they can lose 50 pounds in a month. I
Yep.
can't. I have trouble losing 50 pounds in several years. But, you know, it's like, it's super easy to come up from the bottom. But then once you get close, it gets harder
It gets
harder.
harder and harder. As you get closer to 100%, it's harder to get all the way there. Life expectancy has been rising for quite a while. For much of human history, the average life expectancy was just 30 years. Now, a sizable part of the reason for that is due to infant mortality rates being very high. But then again, as you start getting older, you start having various issues, and without medical science to intervene, some of those issues will kill you, like if you develop appendicitis or
Gallbladder.
or any number of things. You can end up dying relatively young from something that today is easily fixed.
Well, when I had my gallbladder removed, my liver was stopping functioning because it was over Thanksgiving weekend that I had my really bad attack. And
This was a few years ago.
yeah, quite a few years ago, like 10 or 11 years ago. But actually more than that, 'cause my dad's been gone now almost 10 years, so about 12, 13 years ago. But anyway, so it happened my really bad attack happened on Thanksgiving night, and the hospital that he took me to was very small, and they were on a skeleton crew, and he said, you might want to wait just till you get to your, back home and, take care of it with your own doctor. So I saw the doctor on Monday. So I really didn't eat or drink anything all weekend because everything made me nauseous and it hurt so bad. So I was dehydrated. I hadn't eaten anything for days. And then the doctor wanted to put me in the hospital that day to have my gallbladder taken out. And I said, look, I'm a teacher and a Girl Scout leader. I can't just fall off the planet. I have to tell everybody what's going on. How about if we schedule this for tomorrow? And he's like, you really need to be in the hospital tonight. But, I'm a Lamson. I keep on ticking. So, so then the next day I went into the hospital, and oh my gosh, just pointing my toe to put it under the blankets when I got into the hospital bed, my whole foot and my leg cramped up because I was so bad. And afterwards they told me my skin was turning yellow, my eyes were starting to turn yellow, my liver wasn't functioning. So you legit can die from gallbladder disease, and it does not take long.
No.
So, yeah.
Yep. So medical science also, again, nutrition has improved human lifespan as well, because you're not eating enough, then you starve to death. Even if you do have enough to keep your belly full, you may not be getting all the nutrition, all the right vitamins that you need, and so you can die from some vitamin deficit, like people dying of scurvy.
Yeah.
Because they don't have vitamin C, of all things. But today, life expectancy has more than doubled. That is, today the average person can expect to live to 72 years old. And then in the more industrialized countries, life expectancy is in the 80s. So, and again, it's thanks to all these different issues. That is, improvements in taking care of infants so that they don't end up dying. Women don't die in childbirth too often anymore, although that was a relatively common thing even as late as the 1930s, because my mother's mother died from complications associated with childbirth, something that would not have happened nowadays. Let's see. 200 years ago, another improving statistic, 200 years ago, more than 90% of the world's population was illiterate. 90% of the human race 200 years
Ben
ago
Franklin talked about
could
that
not read
in his
or write.
In his autobiography too, about the colonies, because he brought libraries to the United States, and he mentioned that the amount of books that people were able to read, like literacy, went way up because of public libraries. You could just go there and you could borrow a book and read it and then take it back and get another book. And people hadn't had that opportunity before.
Right.
So, and books were so expensive. They were extremely expensive to buy.
Especially up until the advent of the printing press.
Right.
Then
But
the
even
prices
then,
dropped.
with the printing press, what was I watching?
They were still not.
They would have to hang the papers.
Yeah, there's a
on
lot
a
of labor
clothesline.
involved. in it.
Yeah, I was like, dang. Because now we just print stuff out. It's like, oh, can you print me a copy of this?
Yeah.
Sure.
And of course, today with ebooks, you can get a lot of ebooks for free. Anything that's out of copyright, you can get for free. Go to Amazon. If you want to read something by Aristotle or Plato or anything more than about 100 years old, it's free.
Well, I've been listening to books because I'm too busy just to sit and read a book. Because the whole time I'm reading the book, I'm thinking, I could be doing this, I could be doing this. I've got papers to grade, I could be doing this. But instead, I'm listening to books while I'm doing these other things. Kind of the mindless activities.
Yeah.
Because then I can listen to books. And while I'm driving, hither and yon.
So 200 years ago, 90% of people were illiterate. Today, 90% of the human race can read. So it's completely flipped in 200 years. And yet we think of that as just being normal. So vastly fewer children die young. Already mentioned that. Demographers estimate that in pre-modern societies, out of every 1,000 babies born, about 300 died before reaching their first birthday, 30%.
Wow.
Thankfully today, the global infant mortality rate is 90% lower than it was in pre-modern society and sits at around 29 deaths per 1,000 live births. So that's a significant improvement,
Is that from all causes?
It's from all causes. See.
Well, and people back in the day had to have a lot of kids because one, you needed people to work your farm, and two, you knew some of them were going to die. And imagine that, like having like 12 or 13 kids, knowing that probably only 9 of these are going to survive.
Yeah. Plus, also your wife may end up dying too. So you end up having 2 or 3 wives just because they keep dying from having children.
Right.
Anytime a woman would get pregnant, her odds of surviving the pregnancy were not that great.
Yeah.
She had a significant chance of dying.
Well, and just the fact that micropreemies survive now and are like healthy. I know 2 micropreemies personally who are phenomenal. They're smart. They're on their level in school. They don't have any significant. One has a slight hearing impairment, but you would not know it. They tried putting a hearing aid in her ear when she was little, and she didn't like it. She compensates for it. So, plus now, well, they don't live in California, but in California, we're supposed to wear microphones when we teach with surround sound. It helps students with ADHD to focus, and it also helps kids that might have some kind of hearing impairment to hear. I had a student with a hearing impairment last year. Nice girl. But nothing having to do with micropreemies, just went off on a little bird walk.
Yeah.
Smart girl too. Well, this is interesting. We were talking about Helen Keller this week in school, and I explained to the kids, I said, if you had a child with a disability, or if you were a child with a disability, you didn't get to go to school. And your parents just had to raise you the best they could and teach you what they could. And the kids were shocked because, we have all kinds of kids. We have kids in wheelchairs at our school, kids with all kinds of disabilities. Some are in regular ed, some are in special ed, depending on their ability levels. But, and the kids, that's so foreign to them. And what's interesting is my paraeducator, she's from Syria. And in Syria, if you have a kid with an issue, not to mention their schools are shut down because of all the civil war going on. But under normal circumstances, if you have a kid with a disability, they don't get to go to school. You keep them at home and you teach them a trade or something because they don't get to go to school. In America, we are super privileged. We are so good to our kids. Every kid deserves an education, even if they are barely functional.
We give them the best that they are capable of achieving.
Yes, and
That's what we care about. That's what is important to
yeah,
us.
and that doesn't happen in other. And people say, "Well, America's test scores are so low." It's because we educate everybody. We educate the kids that don't want to learn. We educate the kids that want to learn. We educate the kids that can't learn, and
As best that we can.
that's right. And so, well, just the Americans with Disabilities Act. I
Yeah,
traveled.
you don't have that in other parts.
Yeah.
Americans with Disabilities Act doesn't exist outside of America.
Just because you're an
how
American with a
odd.
disability doesn't mean they have to comply with it there.
Yeah.
When I went to Europe, and a friend of ours who has a daughter who's in a wheelchair, she said, "Oh, I'd love it if you would take my daughter with you next time you travel." And I was like, "That would be cool." And I thought about it. There's no getting her around. We went to Rome. It's all stairs. There are no handicap ramps. They have not retrofitted anything for handicap. There's nothing
No
for the handicap.
elevators, nothing.
Oh, and the elevators in some of these hotels were so small. Like 2 of us with our suitcases like crammed between us could fit in one, and it was super narrow. And then if you push the button for, like, say the 3rd floor and the 4th floor, once somebody got in or out on the 3rd floor, you had to push it again for the 4th floor because it would forget.
And the hallways will be narrow. Bathrooms are small, so you can't get in with your wheelchair.
Yeah, we got an ADA compliant hotel room one
If you're
time.
blind, they're not going to have
The braille things.
braille
and stuff,
things
yeah.
around.
Before my mom had her hip surgery, my sister said, "Let's get an ADA compliant hotel room," when we stayed at the Hilton. And we decided we didn't like that because she didn't really need all that ADA stuff, which we thought it might help her, but it ended up not helping. And it was actually more inconvenient because there was stuff that we wanted to have in the room that we couldn't have because it was ADA compliant. Like you have a little washer and dryer thing. And we couldn't be in there because of the way that you had to have it so that wheelchairs could slide under the counter and stuff. So,
We take these things for granted here, and yet they're all relatively recent innovations that the past did not have.
yep.
I mean, Solomon, even in Ecclesiastes, besides writing there's nothing new under the sun, he also said that it's not wise to ask why were the old days better than today, because that's nonsense. The past is not better than the present. So ask a person that has disabilities whether they'd rather living now or in the 1950s, even in the U.S. It's a lot easier now.
Yep.
If you're African American, I think you would find that it's a lot better living today than it would be in the 1950s, and certainly in the 1850s. Things do get better.
Well, it's funny because I show a movie to my kids every February because it's Black History Month. I do Black History all throughout the year, but I focus on it really in February because that's the month.
That's the official month
right.
for it.
And it's called Perfect Harmony. And it's not a very well... There was another movie made called Perfect Harmony, not that. So this one has the guy from Bosom Buddies in it, Peter Scolari in it. So, but anyway, it's really good. It's historical fiction, but it covers a lot of the issues like church bombing, black people not being able to swim in white pools, and it's set at a boys' school in the Deep South, this boy's grandfather, he's black, he's the caretaker on the property. And it's interesting because the kids get really mad because our kids aren't used to that level of discrimination. And in my class, I've got black kids and white kids and Mexican kids and Asian kids and, all different, like, if you were, like, I can't really think because I don't really pay attention, but my kids, I have more kids of color than, I guess no color, white, than peach colored kids, but in my class, and it's interesting to watch them see how infuriating it is. And there's this group of white boys, one of them ends up being the hero. One kid's just mean to everybody, And he's especially mean to the black kid, but he's mean to the other white kids too, because he's got issues like his parents never come to see him and things like that. So he's just a jerk. But then you've kind of got the group of kids that just kind of follows along, and they're just kind of there adding, environment to the thing. So, but anyway, it's a really good movie. The other one I show the kids is Ruby Bridges. And there's a version that I have that I really, really like. And they just don't understand why the police are taking her to school. And then when they see the people just saying these horrible things, their eyes are like this. And they do hear the N-word and stuff. And I tell them, I said, you're going to hear words in this that it's like once or twice that you are not to use at school. And I will not tolerate you using it. And most of the time they don't really hear it. But occasionally you'll hear, oh, like that. That was the word. But anyway, because it's so foreign to them, because they're just kids, and they're used to playing with other kids.
Yeah, we forget how radically different the modern world is compared to the past.
Yeah.
Because we're entirely comfortable and used to this, and it just seems, well, of course it should be this way.
Oh, and they were shocked that Harriet Tubman didn't have a birthday.
Uh-huh.
They were like, what? I go, that's like your second favorite holiday in the year. You've got Christmas and your birthday, right? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, she couldn't celebrate her birthday. She didn't know when it was. And they guessed at when she probably was born. But I said, if you own slaves, you don't keep those kind of records, you know? So it was fascinating. I love teaching that stuff to kids because they're so innocent and about those things.
Yeah.
And they don't realize how bad things were.
Yeah, try to be a woman in the past, too. This is not a nice thing.
It's hard to vacuum in pumps.
Well, but thinking in terms of...
It's hard to vacuum. I hate vacuuming.
Yeah, well, that's why we have robot vacuums now. We've got one in the church does the job. We don't have to go under chairs or anything. It's nice.
Yeah. Go 21st century.
Yes, robots are good. What was I going to say?
I don't know.
Women.
We keep distracting
They
ourselves.
couldn't vote. Couldn't do a lot of things
because
on
we were
your
too
own.
emotional.
Yes, and you couldn't do things for yourself.
Right.
Well, when I was at UCLA, one of the first classes I had to take as a graduate student working on my master's program was a research methodology class that is teach you how to do research. I'd already had that kind of a class as an undergraduate. But the teacher we had was an Egyptologist. She was, I think, in her 80s by that point. She seemed quite elderly. And she had lots of very interesting stories to tell about what it was like as a woman trying to become an Egyptologist. And it was really hard. In fact, part of the reason she was teaching this course on research methodology is because one of the things she had to do is to get a master's degree in library science. So she was very good at doing research, and she knew how to use the library, and so she was helping us understand how the library, and that I found valuable because at my undergraduate college, they use the Dewey Decimal System. UCLA's libraries use the Library of Congress system, and so they're considerably different as far as how things are organized. So it was useful to figure that out. But anyway, yeah, it was very hard for her to get a job as an Egyptologist or to make any contributions or to do anything. Eventually she was able to, but it was just incredibly difficult because she was a woman. And it was just unfathomable that should have been a problem. Because I had graduate students, and see, I was in the Department of Near Eastern Languages and Cultures, and so part of that is Egyptology. I actually took Egyptian, one of the languages that I learned.
I helped them study for it.
Yes.
So I know the symbol Ra.
Yes.
Looks like an eye.
But anyway, half the class were women. And that seemed perfectly normal, but not in her day it wasn't.
Well, when I watched that one documentary I was talking about, for that one king or whatever,
Right.
That they found recently, the person who was reading the hieroglyphics was a woman, a Muslim woman, and because she had a head covering, and then there was a guy there that was her assistant. So things have changed.
Things have changed enormously, and yet we take it for granted. And what's interesting, too, as the world improves, then the things that annoy you, the problems, are increasingly small. That is, we have solved a lot of the big problems, and so the smaller problems for us are big problems. And
Well,
so,
that's why people qualify things with first world problems.
Yeah.
'Cause, like my cable's down, hashtag first world problems.
right. But, in the old days, people would go to the store and, well, there's a famine, there's nothing here to buy, you'll just have to starve to death. Now we go to McDonald's and we find out that their milkshake machine is down, and we freak out because we have to have soda instead
Now I
of
have
milkshake.
to drive to the other McDonald's 4 miles away.
Yes.
Like literally our McDonald's like 4 miles away from each other. Or like Starbucks. Like almost all the Starbucks in this valley were closed for like a month. And all of a sudden there's like this big uptick in discussions about Starbucks in like the local Facebook pages. Why is this Starbucks closed? Does anybody know where there's a Starbucks open? I really need to get my double stars on Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever it is. And like all these people, and I don't go to Starbucks often, but we went, it was early in the morning because we were
That's right.
taking the train
Yes.
to go to a speakeasy, basically, to get our hair done. And now salons are open. But anyway, so I'm like, well, let's get you some breakfast at Starbucks on the way. And we drove through. Their menu light was on. The person in front of us sat there for like took them forever to take that person's order. And then they went through, and then we pulled up, and it took them forever. Nobody said anything. I'm like, hello, anybody in there? I'm like, what is going on? So I mean, their store light was on and the menu board was on. So they should have been open. We drive around. There's nobody in there. It was weird. I was like, well, I guess that's why we didn't answer. There's nobody here. And all the people behind us had to find out one at a time because the menu board light was on. Like, shut it off or put up a sign. We are temporarily closed. They're open now. But it was like, and then we're like,
weird.
Great. Thankfully, we had enough time. We drove through McDonald's and got him breakfast, but it made us like just in time for the train. We didn't have a whole lot of wiggle room in there.
Yes.
But anyway.
But anyway, as problems are solved, then lesser problems go up the list. And so today, the big issues with racism, sexism have been solved. That is, the laws are in place that you can't discriminate against people based on gender, color, ethnicity, you name it. And so now you have people worried about microaggressions.
Yeah.
Okay.
It makes me want to macroaggress on them
Yeah.
when they say things like
It seems a little bit odd.
that. Macroaggress.
And as human beings tend to be kind of mean to each other. We're good at that. We're better at being mean to each other than we are being nice to each other.
Well-
Our default setting is to snap.
I think what's interesting is that the fact that the vaccines have come along so quickly doesn't seem to have impressed us as much now that they're out. It's like, why can't I get my vaccine?
Yes.
Like my mother still has, I cannot get her an appointment for a vaccine, and she's 80. They're
Right.
still doing healthcare workers in the county where she lives. And I can't get her, and she keeps calling me, well, try this, try this. I'm like, nobody has them. Everybody says healthcare workers only. So I've signed her up now with the state, so she'll get a notification when it's her turn. But people are like, why can't I get my vaccine? It's like, you know what? If this had been 1918, there wasn't even, I mean, they were vaccinating people, but they were vaccinating with the wrong thing because they didn't know
They
about
had no
viruses. Yeah, viruses weren't something that they were able to see under microscopes yet. So they were vaccinating them against bacteria, not against the virus. So, and then, this 5 to 30 years to come up with a vaccine. And then, the flu vaccine, some years they're right on, some years not so much. Now it's more accurate. They've gotten really good at predicting what strain of the flu it's going to be, but that's happened
we
over
take
time.
it for granted.
Yeah. And you
It's
just
like-
go get your flu shot,
yeah.
and it's like, it's probably effective. I'm good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just funny how, and that changed really fast. Like, it was like, whoa, there's already a vaccine. I mean, they had the first vaccine in January last year before the shutdowns.
Right.
And
But it took that they had to test it, and so they
Right.
couldn't just we got a vaccine, let's just start shooting people up. Well,
Right.
that's not a good idea.
yeah, like it'd be like smallpox. It's like, well, hopefully you don't die, but if you do, we tried.
Yeah, we're sorry.
Yeah. Sorry in advance, SIA. Sorry in advance. But
But it's remarkable that we could come up with, the scientists were able to come
Yeah.
up with a vaccine almost instantly.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. They've now learned that they probably don't need the stage 1 trials because of the technology that they have and the fact that they're doing.
We understand what's going on well enough that
Right.
that type of test is no longer necessary.
Right. So, and they're actually getting it from the actual RNA or DNA of the whatever the thing is.
Yes.
So, well, and that's how they treat breast cancer now. I have an aunt who passed away almost 30 years ago of metastasized breast cancer. And, when she first got breast cancer, they were like cutting things off and they were just shooting her with whatever weapon they had to try to save her life.
It's the best
Now
they could do then.
they look at the tumor, they take its DNA, and they're like, okay, it's this kind of a tumor, so we have this group of drugs that seems to work on it. Let's try this. And it's much more. Well, when my mom was having her chemo for her ovarian cancer, they would mix it up in the pharmacy like that day, specialized just for her based on the information they had from her doctor.
Yep.
And it worked. She's been in remission now it's been over a year, almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in May.
Yeah.
And
And this is, again, why people live longer. Because of modern medicine, healthcare, at all stages of our lives.
Yep. Wow, we only have 3 minutes left. I feel like we didn't even really touch the topic.
No,
We did? Okay.
yeah, I think we did talk about it pretty well.
So we went in segments, but nobody, our friend Dennis from Sweden said greetings. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, Dennis.
And I saw it, but we were in the middle of something. So, but I don't know if he's still here because if he's awake, he catches us. But
Yeah, the
he's in
time
Sweden,
difference
so,
is
yeah,
kind of extreme.
yeah.
So it's hard.
I'm wondering how much snow they have. So, how
Of course,
deep is the snow,
think
Dennis?
about what a remarkable thing this is, though. That
Yeah.
we can do this sort. I mean, think of the technology that we're making use of just doing this webcast.
Yep. This used to be millions of dollars worth of equipment
Yeah.
back in the day.
And now this is being done in a small church.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
So-
Okay, so speaking of small churches, Quartz Hill Community Church, check out our Facebook page. We live stream there every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Pacific time if you're interested. And like I said early in the show, it's now smoother because last week I was watching the feed and I'm like, why are you moving like a robot? And he said, well, it's probably that cheap whatever card it was.
HDMI capture card.
Okay, and
Well,
so we
I'd
bought a
spent-
new one.
Yeah, well, see, we had one that was $120 or so, and it worked really well. And then we wanted, for the second camera, we needed another one, and I thought, I can just get this cheap one. It's $16. Why should I spend so much? Well, I
Yeah.
learned the hard way that
Spend so much.
Spend so much. So we ordered another identical $20 one, which I have installed, and so this week it'll be just fine.
Yes. So, and we're using so much less of the computer's resources that unless we're having actual internet issues, like in or out of the church, it's all good. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so steady.
Yeah, and also the video quality is better on YouTube. It's 1080p high definition on Facebook, because apparently Facebook can only handle up to 720p, and so that's what we are.
They're so backward.
I don't understand
They're
that.
so last year.
I've tried to see if there's any way to improve the, make it full HD, but I can't.
How they keep us from having free speech. So Dennis said there's no snow in the south, but much more in the north. So
Okay.
I just think of Sweden as just a little country. I didn't really think that
It's
there would be
kind of-
like different.
Yeah, it's long.
Yeah, well, I know, but still, it's like, I
and
should
it's
probably
way up there.
look. Well, it's way up there, so it should all have snow. You would think.
Well, you've got southern and northern.
Well, I guess, yeah.
Which you just
So
said.
it's you must live in the Florida of Sweden. So
All things are relative.
yes. No, Dennis is not one of our relatives.
No, probably
our
not.
relatives are on Facebook. Hi, Steve and Dar and Aunt Dolly.
Yes.
So, Steve said it looks good in New Jersey. So you guys had snow though. You guys got I think some decent snow, but now
the
Steve
mountains
said it was just
around us
frosty.
got snow. We had rain here in Lancaster.
We did have snow flurries the other
That's
day.
right, you did.
There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and all of a sudden there's snow flurries going by my classroom. And I went outside. I told the kids, I go, stop a minute, look out your windows. Because they're all at home. I go, look out your windows. We're having snow flurries. And they're like, what's snow flurries? I go, look out your window. You'll know what they are. And so it was. And they came down it was like for an hour, and then they stopped for a little while, and then they came down again. But it was like super windy. So I think there was a cloud off to the west
Yeah, it was
that was
blowing.
firing off snow, and it just was blowing across us. But we've had so much wind lately. It's been bad. But
More so than normal for the
yeah.
AV.
Oh, he said there's more snow coming. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but for them in New Jersey,
In New Jersey,
not for here.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't get snow very
Not
often,
very
so it's
often.
kind of a treat.
Yeah, once every few years we'll get some snow.
Now, about 9 years ago, we got snow like twice in like a week or 2
Yeah.
weeks or something. It
We
was
had-
really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, West Coast. West Coast of Sweden or West Coast of the United States? Okay, so maybe he's in the Southern California of Sweden. So maybe that's what he's trying to say. All right, so
Well,
you guys
it's
have a
5
good
o'clock.
one. We'll see you
Yeah.
next. Wait, what's the topic next week?
Oh, next week, just a second here.
That's the church one.
There it is.
Oh, they're supposed to get up to 18 inches.
Or did I-
Oh, my mom's watching
there
too.
it is.
Oh, that's hard to get on there.
Death and life.
Okay. Now we did have a request about
And
the
I've
3
scheduled that
versions.
for the 20th.
So the
February
request
12th.
that we had about eternal damnation is on February 20th. What about hell? But next week is death and life.
Yes.
So we'll see you guys then. Lord
Yes.
willing, and the creek don't rise.
Yep.
Although it might, 'cause we're supposed to get more rain.